This is an example of solving a quadratic equation using the factoring method, or the zero factor property. Our equation is 6x squared minus 15x equals 9. To use the zero factor property, it's important that our equation is set equal to 0. This method only works if the equation is set equal to 0. For our equation, that means we need to subtract 9 from both sides. Now we have 6x squared minus 15x minus 9 equals 0, and we're ready to try to factor this. When you're going to factor, you should look for a common factor first, something that goes into all three terms. We're looking for something that goes evenly into 6, 15, and 9. In this case, that common factor is 3. We're going to divide every single term by 3. Our equation will still be equivalent, but our numbers will be smaller and easier to deal with. Dividing by 3 gives us 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 equals 0. We're going to continue factoring by breaking this down into two sets of parentheses. We want to pick numbers that multiply together to be 2x squared. I'm going to choose 2x and x. Next, I need numbers that will multiply together to be negative 3. I'm going to choose 3 and 1. Notice that this is a negative product. I need two numbers that multiply together to be negative 3. That means I need a positive number times a negative number, or a negative number times a positive number. I'm going to try the signs like this first. 2x plus 3, x minus 1. Now it's really important that you factor this correctly in order to solve it correctly. So before we go any further, we're going to check our factoring by multiplying this out using the FOIL method. Our first product is 2x squared, outside product negative 2x, inside product 3x, and the last product is negative 3. So when I multiply this out and combine like terms, I get 2x squared plus x minus 3. Compare this to the equation we had earlier. Notice they don't match. That means we did not factor this correctly. That means we have to start all over. Let's go back to our equation and try different numbers. We still need numbers that multiply together to be 2x squared, so we're keeping the 2x and the x. We need numbers that multiply together to be 3. So let's try 1 and 3, but let's write them in different positions this time and see if that affects our answer. Again, we have a negative product at the end, so we need two different signs, a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive. Let's try our signs like this. And let's check our factoring. This time we're multiplying 2x plus 1 times x minus 3 by distributing 4 times using the FOIL method. Our first product would be 2x squared, outside product negative 6x, inside product 1x, last product negative 3. Combine like terms to get 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Compare this to our equation. It matches. We factored it correctly. Okay, now that we've factored it, what do we do next? Let's see, we have something times something equals 0. Whenever you have two factors with a product of 0, that means one of those factors must be equal to 0. So our next step is to set each of these factors equal to 0. From my 1 equation, I now have two separate equations. 2x plus 1 equals 0, and my other factor, x minus 3, equals 0. We're going to solve each of these equations separately. Let's start with the one on the left. 2x plus 1 equals 0. To get x by itself in this equation, I need to subtract 1 from both sides. Then I need to divide by 2 on both sides. This gives me a solution of x equals negative 1/2. We're ready to solve our second equation, x minus 3 equals 0. To get x by itself in this equation, we need to add 3 to both sides. This gives me a solution of x equals 3. As with all equations, we can check our solution by plugging these back into the original equation. So let's check. And we're going to go back to the original 6x squared minus 15x equals 9. and we're going to plug in our first solution of negative 1/2. Everywhere we see an x, we're putting negative 1/2 instead. Okay, let's apply our exponent. Negative 1/2 squared is really a positive 1/4. Then multiply our fractions. 6 times 1/4 is 6/4. Negative 15 times negative 1/2 makes positive 15/2. One of these fractions can be reduced. 6/4 reduces to 3/2. Now we have a common denominator and we can add these fractions together. 3/2 plus 15/2 is 18/2. Notice 18/2 is really equal to 9. This is a true statement. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So now we know x equals negative 1/2 is a solution to this equation. We have to check our other solution too. So let's go back to our original equation again. This time in place of x, we're going to plug in 3. Everywhere we see an x, we're going to put a 3 instead. Okay, let's apply our exponent. 3 squared is 9. 6 times 9 is 54, and negative 15 times 3 is negative 45. 54 minus 45 really is equal to 9. This is a true statement as well. So now we know that x equals 3 is also a solution to this quadratic equation. So we have two solutions, x equals negative 1/2 and x equals 3.